Welcome to the ONSTAGE podcast. I'm your host, Chris Robert.
Hi, how are you?
Nice to see you. How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Good. So it's so good to see you. I'm sorry all this email back and forth to try to send you that special link, but that's how it works. And my cat is by the window, so please move. She wants
Oh,
the water. Hello, Kylie.
Hi, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Good to see you. I'm so glad and honored that you are on our podcast.
Me too. Thanks so much for coming on. I'm so happy to be on here. Thanks so much for
Yeah.
asking me.
Yeah. Thank you very much. And I'm sorry to say that it's on a Friday night, and I know you like to do things with your friends.
Yeah, no worries at all.
Yeah. So, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, just so that people know who you are?
Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 1 of the Talk of Fame podcast. I'm Kylie. I'm so excited to have on co-host of the Big Swing podcast, Cooper Surles. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me on. I'm glad to be here. Congrats on your first episode.
Thank you so much.
Hello. Hello,
Hey,
Kylie.
everyone.
How are you? So,
Anniversary. It's amazing.
everyone, this is the second anniversary of the OnStage podcast, and we are live with my co-host Kylie Montigney from Talk of Fame podcast, and also she celebrated she didn't celebrate, but she had her second anniversary on April 17th, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But I have some questions for you, Kylie. So what's been going on with you?
Yeah, so very busy things happening here lately. I'm trying to think how many like what to say though, because there's so much going on lately. But the thing I've been doing really is this accepted a food part-time job with a food dignity movement. The food dignity movement is a nonprofit. Is like based in 44 Pennsylvania, but like it's like all like the founder Clancy Harrison does speaking engagements all around the world. She's amazing. Food Dignity basically is a nonprofit that supports local farmers and does events like produce stands, food distributions, pay what you can. They have a bunch of events here in Pennsylvania, and basically, they get harvest like from crops. That day we have events, which is amazing. I'm a media specialist for them and a food recovery fellow for them, which is amazing. I love it. I'm loving every second of it. And super grateful for this opportunity. And recently, I just got another job at the Mohegan Sun Arena down here in Pennsylvania as a box office attendant. So a lot of job opportunities I'm super excited for. And seeing a bunch of events and opportunities, which is amazing. And also a lot of podcast opportunities, but a lot of podcasts recently talking about my organization and podcast, which is super cool. I'm super grateful for opportunities. Also with my own podcast, we've got a lot of recordings that may or may not be released. I saw some episodes to be released, which is very exciting. So I'm not always behind, like don't have any episodes to upload. So I mean, I'm always thankful for that, and really busy trying to get schoolwork done and also putting my advocacy for women empowerment and podcast in place to help other people. So that's kind of a little bit of what I've been going through recently. But how about you, Chris?
Deal with a lot of documents and making sure that everyone, like clients, get their orders. So that seems to work out. And they gave us all new iPhone 12s as work phones to replace our iPhone 7s, which are no good because the batteries don't last more than an hour. with my iPhone 13, I got two iPhones, and what do I have to carry both of them with me? Because as you know, the iPhone 13 is very heavy, but you imagine carrying like a 12 with you now? It's like extra heavy.
Yeah, like I have an iPhone 14, and basically, like when I carry around, I always have to hold on into my back pocket with my phone because it takes up like my whole pocket. So I have to like hold it to make sure it doesn't fall out of my pocket. This is so big.
So you have the 14 already?
Mm-hmm.
When did that come out?
It came out. When did it come out? Like a year or two ago, probably. It's very new. I know they just came out with the 15.
And what's so different about that in the 13? Well, what do you find so different about it?
There's really not much of a difference between the 14 and 13. There's really the difference between how new of the iPhones are.
So did you have a 13 to begin with? Or what phone did you have that you went right to the 14? Did you get like one every year, 12, 11, 13, 14?
No, I just had that like I had the iPhone 11. I forget what type of phone the 11 was I had, but I had that for like 2 to 3 years, and that started to kind of go downhill because it was getting old and stuff. So I ended up getting a new phone last year. Well, kind of earlier this year, actually, I got the new phone, so which was nice to kind of, get the newer phone and have a new technology without having the same phone for a couple years at a time.
I started with a iPhone 4 because I hated the iPhone originally. And at one point years ago, I decided to get the small little iPods.
Mm-hmm.
That was the only Apple product I ever wanted, and I put like 150 songs on there. So one of my coworkers, he said, because he goes every year for 3 weeks, every year he goes to Nova Scotia to visit his friend. So he asked me for the iPod. So I put all these songs on there for him. And when he came back without it. And I said, "Where is it?" And he said he lost it. So I had no iPod, but he gave me the money for it. And I used that money and said, "You know what? I think I'll buy an iPhone, see what that's like." So I bought an iPhone 4, and then I had the 5, I had the 7, I had the iPhone XS. So I love the iPhone. iPhone 13. The iPhone 15's coming out. I don't know if you'd be interested in getting that one, but I'm always one behind.
Yeah, I'm the same. I'm the same here too. But I'm always like when the new one comes out, I'm always like just got the one that just came out like this year and year before.
So why is it the iPhone you like so much, not the Android? Have you tried the Android?
A little bit. Like my father has an Android, so I kind of, grew up kind of playing on his phone and playing games and everything. But I like the idea of like having like the FaceTime opportunity with having an iPhone is like you can FaceTime your friends, family, or going kind of on the meetings on the phone and can join from your phone, which is nice. But I really like the FaceTime opportunity that iPhone has that Samsungs don't really have.
Well, I know the iPhone, especially the 13, and probably the 14 has better quality film. But
Yeah.
I love the 13 because you can set it up to film in 4K. But the only problem is that 5 minutes of 4K is like 2 gigs, 3 gigs.
Mm-hmm.
If you think doing a podcast with a video, I know that an hour podcast is like 1 to 2 gigabytes.
Yeah.
5 minutes of 4K is like 1 to 2 gigabytes.
It's huge. When I look through recordings and switch it to Google Docs to save like a lot of like storage on my computer, and it tells me like every time like how much gigabytes this like the podcast episode holds in one podcast, and it takes so much. I gotta do over a 30-minute episode.
So, how do you deal with your mental health? Because you have two podcasts. You have the Woman of Empowerment podcast, I think is called. What is that one that you do for Women Empowerment podcasts?
Oh,
Real Talk or something?
Oh, like I did real talk, but then like me and her decided to part ways with the podcast due to our scheduling conflicts. But I have no NEPA story, which I do locally that started earlier like this summer.
So how do you deal with having Talk of Fame podcast and then Empowerment Women? Then you get together and have like a Zoom call that I saw once of all these women in one window there in the Zoom call, and then you have your school and then you have your job. How do you deal with the whole, like, you have other things going on that are non-podcast, non-interview type things? How do you deal
Mhm.
with it? Is it like, what do you do to settle down, to take a breath?
Yeah, like it's honestly, I'm so happy you mentioned that because I know I'm always like mentioning, asking people like during interviews, I'm like, how do you do it all? Like, how do you do it all? But for me, this is very difficult, especially being 17-year-old doing all these things. It's honestly very difficult to manage, especially with living my life and doing my work. Also, is a both are big priorities for me to kind of make time for my family and friends and going out, and also doing my work also at school, podcasting, and making time for other organizations I'm involved in, and really just helping make a difference in my community because I'm involved in different organizations and volunteering and everything. So I mean, it's very hard, but also overwhelming with joy because I love what I do. So it's also like it's like even when I'm like down on myself about doing it, I'm just like, why do I have to do this? Like, I'm exhausted. I have so much to go do and everything. Like, this was me yesterday with having so much to do in such a little time. Um, it takes a lot of energy and stuff out of you that I'm trying to kind of figure out how to do a time management with my work and my personal life, which I'm trying to do. But really, the things that kind of help me each day to kind of push through, like with my mental health personally, like with my work and my schooling and everything, and in everything I'm involved in, is really walking. That I walk 1 hour each day. That helps me so much. I always like headphones in and walk around for a couple like an hour. That's so I can like take a break from the world and just kind of relax and get my mind in a different space and relax when I'm angry. And I just got into running, which is a tool that has helped me a lot recently. I'm trying to train for a 5K that's happening on Thanksgiving. Well, Thanksgiving
Wow.
here in the United States at the what I call it, November. I almost
November,
forgot when it
yeah.
was, but yeah,
Wow.
I'm trying to train for a 5K. I'm not sure if I'm going to do it or not, but I'm hoping I do, depending on how the training goes. But yeah, like the things that really keep me going is really just walking and running, and also music and dancing. Like I got sometimes when I'm stressed or like when I just need a little kind of break, like just from what I'm doing, and just kind of relieve the stress out of me. So I would just put on headphones or go on TikTok, look at different TikToks and just sit and relax or watch my favorite TV show or something, a show or movie that I really like. Or just really just listen to music and just start dancing for 5 minutes. I get a little dance now, Grey's Anatomy usually calls it. So those are usually things that kind of help me, but it's also like trying to figure out how to manage my day-to-day schedule to make time for my family and also my work at the same time, which has been something I try to figure out. But it's really a day by day thing, but it's very difficult, but it's all worth it now.
That's fun. That sounds like fun because you're doing a 5K or
Mm-hmm.
will be doing a 5K in Thanksgiving, which is the American Thanksgiving is around November 12th, I think, weekend.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and you would love doing what we're doing here. So we have the CN Tower in Toronto, and it's 145 flights and 1,796 steps. I did it twice already. And you can't go up with a camera, with a cell phone, um, any watches. You have to go up, with just the clothes on. and the stairs are kind of dank and dark, and you just feel so alone, but you have people walking up with you, and every two flights you have like a paramedic to see, you have people going, the kids can't do it, and then some are just like walking up. And the first time I did it took me 24 minutes, but the second time, because I saw this 13-year-old and his father go up and do the whole thing within 15 minutes, I thought, okay, I'll do what you do. So the following year, by the time I got to the top, but this one was to the point where I started running up and I was like, and so it took me almost an hour to get up to the top. And I'm like, I'm not doing this again. So, and then when you get to the top, they give you free water. But if you want to go up the elevator to meet the person that you're supposed to meet up there, it's $10, but you can take it down for free.
Ooh.
So, but I would love to run the 5K. Have you done it before?
No, it's my first time. So I'm a little nervous about this and trying to doubt myself in doing it, but it's my first time. But I always wanted to do one because I always see my family and stuff do like marathons and stuff. So it kind of motivated me to kind of do one for myself and everything.
Yeah, I think what you put your hands to, you can accomplish anything. Because look, you got like 2 podcasts, I think, and you got Empowerment Girls, and like you're just a powerhouse.
And who
And
knows? And there's might be another podcast on the way. A little hint.
how many podcasts can you handle? Only 2?
Good question, actually. I don't know. It depends. Like it depends on the day for me usually.
So you think you can have 4 or 5 podcasts? You think you can run 5 podcasts?
Probably, yeah. I mean, it'll take a lot out of me though, but I think I probably could handle the 5 podcasts.
Well, that's what the 5K is for, to get rid of all that energy.
Yeah, just be running.
That's amazing. Wow, and you just turned 17 too.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, and happy birthday, like I mentioned, and
Thank you.
that's great. You've come a long way since your very first episode.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, it's been a ride.
So my first question to you, Kylie, is what do people misunderstand about you the most?
Ooh, that's a hard question. I'll probably say this question really makes me think. Like, I think like what people misunderstood about me probably is that I'm just a normal teenager that does a lot of things. I mean, people can probably think like, oh, she's a workaholic. Why is she always working? Like, why is she always doing things? And that's because I just love it so much. Like, I just do everything I do because I love it. Like, I wouldn't be doing what I've been doing if I didn't love it. Like, it's just like hard to do something every single day if you hated it or didn't enjoy it. So I would just say like the things that made me like people really misunderstood about me is that I'm just like why she like working all the time at 17 years old. She should go out partying and everything. But that's like I mean, I don't mind going out and having fun. It's just like I'd much rather be having to do work and keep myself busy and also going at the same time so I can achieve what I wanted to achieve. So I would just say like people misunderstood about me is really just like always working all the time and as a 17-year-old that shouldn't be working as much as I kind of do.
Love that answer. Love it. Wow.
Yeah, like I wanted to ask you, like, what is like the toughest kind of part about being a podcast host?
Yeah, so I've never been a podcast host or hosted anything. I've always been a follower. I've never been a manager or a leader. And I'm quite introverted. So basically, even when it comes to meeting a prospective other or meeting other friends or even starting to pray in my prayer group at the church, whatever, I'm always wanting to, okay, why don't you do it? And then I just like to lead and I like to be out in the corner somewhere. But in the beginning of 2021, I took an effective communications course. Now, this is during the pandemic, and I know many people who started a podcast during the pandemic. So I took this effective communication course, and it taught me how to communicate and how to come out of myself. And I figured, but when are we going to be able to do this? Like, we have social distancing. You can't really be in the same room with somebody unless you have a mask on. And I said, I know what I'll do. I'll start a podcast. So on October 11th, I decided to have my first guest, Amy Sinha. That was my very first podcast. I didn't know what to say. I started scripting everything. And then I said, okay, well, once that was over, I said, okay, then there's nothing to this. And then it's just finding people. That was the most hardest part about being a podcast host, is seeking out people. Eventually, I had my second podcast interview was with one of my friends, Kelsey, and she was a musician. So it was a yes for her. So obviously, even before I said, "Can you be on my and before I even said podcast, she said yes. So I set her up. Now, I know that with you, you don't know if what you're going to put your hand to, you're going to continue, because I heard that when you started this podcast of yours, that you weren't going to last very long. Maybe after 4 or 5 episodes, you're going to quit. Well, with me, I loved it. So I said, let's keep doing it. So just remember how you said that to find your guests is to message them. I went to one of my favorite sopranos, Lucy Kay, to her Facebook, and apparently she responds to her fans. So I said, okay, hi. And I told her how I have a podcast. Could she be on the podcast? Could we interview her? And within 2 days, she was on my podcast. And I said, wow, if I can get Lucy Kay on my podcast, I can do anything. So I kept it up. And I never stopped. I mean, I do quit things if I don't enjoy them. Like, I want to learn another instrument because I'm a singer, but I want to learn an instrument like a bass guitar or something. But am I going to enjoy it? Because years ago, I bought a $400 guitar from my friend who's a musician. I bought it from him. And then 4 days later, I handed it back and said, here, can I have my money back? Because I just didn't enjoy strumming the guitar. So things like that, I just said, it's a burden to me. But podcasting, boom, boom, boom. And look, almost 140 episodes. 2 years later. Today is my second anniversary of my podcast. Other things that I find is, where am I going to get the guests from? Which I told you before. Some guests say, I loved it so much. I know a few people who would love to be on your podcast. And I had them send me emails one after another. And now I'm like so inundated. It might be, well, I have to maybe hire someone to do all that scheduling for me, because I got so many. I don't know about you, but I got so many. Like, if I uploaded all the podcasts I currently have right now, I'd be at probably episode 160 right now. So what else? Another thing is, I got this mic here from Amazon. I got 2 computer speakers, and I got this light here, podcast light, which I got from Walmart. Eventually, I'm going to get a real podcast light, but this is like good enough. And there's other things like, should I wear a hat or not? I think now that I'm in the second year, hopefully, I got a co-host now. Thank you very much, and I'm looking forward to more. But getting like different doodads here and there, like, where I find myself? I find myself host a studio. And the guests are brought to me, and I do all my podcasts are in person. But right now, I have this small little area here, and I love it. Sorry, I think
It's the best thing.
did I
Like, I
answer-
always had an idea as well as like doing in-person interviews and having a studio. Like, I know one of my dad's friends has like a podcast studio that was offered to me, but it's like it was very hard kind of have like guests come in locally that live locally come in for an interview that's like a half hour.
Yeah. my next question for you is what's your biggest failure and what did you learn from that experience?
My biggest failure, in terms of podcasts or like life.
Okay, let's do the podcast. What's your biggest failure being a podcast host?
The biggest fail about being a podcast host. I'll just probably say the biggest fail like I had is really like not like being behind on things is probably the best, or have like always waiting last minute to figure out questions is probably the biggest fail, because of course like you want to prepare for the interview, but it's kind of very hard when you have this on a list that you don't have time for. So I'll probably say the biggest fail for me is really just always laying to the last minute and always being behind on publishing episodes. Because I have episodes I haven't published in like 2 weeks, like I filmed 2 weeks ago. So it's, I don't know why, but I have like ADHD to not posting things immediately. Because I don't know why, but it's like it kind of bothers me that I waited this long to publish an episode that was filmed 2 weeks ago. So I'll probably say the biggest fail was just waiting and being behind on things.
And what is it about your ADHD that causes you problems, not only in your podcast hosting, but also at school, in your job, when you're visiting families like Thanksgiving or Christmas dinners, or from Talk of Fame to Kylie doing regular things, regular life?
Yeah, like my podcast, the way I do things really doesn't like shift that much. I mean, it kind of a little bit does, but it's like the way I act and the way I express myself is different from what I do on a podcast, because I don't like to really express deep matters on a podcast, since like things can happen, you're in the public eye, like they have to kind of watch about what you say, what you do. So it's really about like the things that really shift are really just how I act and the way I express myself to my friends and family, really like are different from what I do as a podcast. And also like the way I kind of do things every single day. Like when I'm not doing podcasting and stuff, like I do things separate, like maybe a cleaning, gardening for my family, or just cutting grass, or taking out weeds, or going swimming, like things like that. I'd love to do while I'm not doing interviews, but like my perspective and the way I act and show myself are very different from when I'm on interview like this, um or when I'm doing something for my podcast or doing a little like speaking opportunity.
Now, do you love podcasting? Because when you first started your podcast, you thought you weren't going to last 3, 4 episodes. And they
Yeah.
say, when I started my podcast, they said, if you can last 30 episodes, because most podcasts last 30 episodes and then that's it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like at first, when I started doing podcasts, I was very like questionable about doing it, because I'm like, well, before, like I'm sure like you heard from like episodes and stuff that I was very shy as a kid, and I never talked to people ever, like only besides I family. So it was really kind of hard to really kind of express myself in a way and really start a podcast when I'm very shy and trying to communicate with other people, which was very hard. I'm sure you can see in the clipping from the intro that I was very shy and very, didn't know like what I was doing every single day. And basically when I started my podcast, it was something that shifted in me about public speaking in a way, because when I started my podcast, I didn't know what I was doing. I was very shy. I didn't know what I was doing. But as time went on, I started to kind of grow my love for podcasting in a way, because of course, we're growing with 2 journalists in my family from a local news station down here in Pennsylvania. It's really changed my perspective of what I want to do when I'm older and what I want to pursue in the future, and really just kind of pursue like what I want to pursue in a way. So like, when I started the podcast, it really just my love for it shifted and really just started loving doing each episode. And as time went on, I became more and more obsessed with it, and I've been loving every single moment, which I never expected. But and sometimes in life you don't expect things that you love or be doing, but this was definitely one of those moments where I didn't expect to be doing. But I've been loving every second of it. But I'm so happy I'd never quit this, and like it's been really crazy 2 years, I have to say, but it's been really fun.
Do you have a niche?
What is a niche? I don't know. I heard the
A
thing.
niche is sort of like if you're speaking to entrepreneurs, that's your niche. You talk to entrepreneurs. So what
Gotcha.
would your niche be?
I'll probably say sports is probably the biggest one, or entertainment, because I'm a big entertainment and sports geek ever, or music. So I'll probably say my niche would probably be either entertainment, music, or sports wise for my niche, probably. But how about you?
Well, my friend told me that I should have a niche, but then he says that you should just do all Canadian indie artists. And I'm like, well, then Sting's not Canadian. I intend to have him on the podcast one day. I like to have some American artists on my podcast. So there goes my niche. And then he said, well, your niche can be this, your niche can be that. I said, well, why can't I just have a niche which is musicians?
Mm-hmm.
So I just have musicians. I also have actors and actresses, and sometimes they have musical capabilities. But I just love talking to people, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah,
just love
that's the
meeting
best part
people.
for me as well, is really just getting to meet different types of people that you probably wouldn't have the opportunity to meet before, like without the podcast, which is amazing. Like making different connections and meeting different people, even they're two separate people, like back to back episodes. A singer, this person might be a singer songwriter, for example, and another next episode of the podcast might be a mental health professional. It can, like, for me, it's all different types of things. I love to feature different types of people, not just one specific person or job description, because I love to like feature different types of people and careers, just because I love to get different types of careers and stuff out there in case people want to go into this career field and people can learn about this career field, but also learn about this person, which is nice.
Cool.
But where do you see like on stage podcast in 2024?
Yes, basically, hopefully, episode 200, um, get my podcast monetized, and I guess better equipment. Like this mic's fine, and I know I sound really good with this mic. Um, I had the arm before, this arm one, so I decided to opt with the mic like this. Maybe a bigger studio, uh, and do a lot of in person, because I don't know if you've seen this. I have this. Now, what this is for an iPhone, and I got it from Amazon. Yeah, I'm going to give you a little chance to see this. So this goes in to the bottom of the iPhone,
Oh yeah, I heard of those.
and one person will get one mic to
Mm-hmm.
put on their lapel, and the other person will get the other mic.
Oh yeah.
So, and then so that in person one you did, this would have helped you. And I tried it out. I went 40, 50 feet away and I started speaking, and it sounded like I was taking my iPhone and going like this. That's how
Mm-hmm.
close it was. So
Yeah,
this,
I know I have those. I have to find where it is. I definitely bought some a couple like months ago about that, like about doing in person interviews. I forget where I put it, but like those are really good tools to do things.
well, let me ask you the same question. Where do you find your podcast in 2024?
Whew. Like, I never really kind of thought about it, to be honest with you. I just kind of like went with the go with the flow term. for some reason, I know a lot of people like to do that as well. But I'll say how we could do in 2024 is really doing more in-person interviews rather than virtual. But I don't know why, but I love doing in-person interviews because like the human connection, I feel like it makes a better conversation with doing that interviews in person. So I'll probably say more in-person interviews for either podcast, more opportunities, like with guests, maybe get some big people on, like a A-lister or something, or someone very popular I hope to get on. But it's really about really publishing episodes and really building yourself before you get someone on. I try to like feature lower people than higher people. It always depends because it's hard to get a big like artist or someone like a person in industry on. So I really just like go from the top, like bottom, and just kind of go with the top. And so I'll say like really just kind of getting bigger artists on and really doing more in-person interviews.
Yeah, but many of the interviews you have, the 214 episodes, a lot of them were virtual.
Mm-hmm.
If you really, really wanted to do, okay, let's say Hugh Jackman said, okay, I'm ready, Kylie, let's do the interview, but
Mm-hmm.
you have to come here.
Mm-hmm.
Would you actually literally fly down to see
Mm-hmm.
him to do the interview?
Oh,
You would?
100%, yeah. Like he lives in New York, so it's only a 2-hour ride. So I mean, I would definitely drive there since I like it's so close. But I would honestly do it a heartbeat. I would if he says it, I'll be there in a minute.
Okay, now what if Kaden Tokarski wants another interview, but you have to go down to LA? Would you go down to LA to interview her?
Like if it's in LA, that might be questionable about doing like traveling wise. Like do the money and everything. But if I had an opportunity to go to Los Angeles for an interview or something, I'll definitely do it though. Even if it's like something's in a way, I'll definitely try to come down to Los Angeles because I love Los Angeles. As you can probably, if you're watching this right now, you can probably see that I'm a Dodger fan. So of course I will come down to LA because I love LA so much. But it really depends on like the travel expenses and everything. But I'll definitely do it.
I would definitely do it too, no matter who it is. I like to do more in-person interviews. In fact, on Saturday, I'm doing an in-person interview with a friend of mine,
Mm.
and I have to bring everything with me, such as the laptop, the mic, and everything with me. So that's going to be the second, well, the first in-person interview I did right here in the studio because they came here.
Mm-hmm.
But the second in-person interview will be Saturday. I go there and I bring everything with me. Um, but yeah, so I will go where they are, and if it's if you want to be known as a podcaster who's going to be showing up for people and helping them out, then yes, definitely it's on. Well, I can't. I'd rather stay here. Can we do it virtually, please? They're gonna think really lowly of you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And Lex Fridman or Joe Rogan or Rich Roll or Rick Beato, all these other wonderful podcasters, they're going to go to them because they're willing. Yes, bring them here, bring them here, bring them here.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, yes, definitely, I would go to where they are.
Mm-hmm.
If you could be remembered for one thing, what would it be?
Ooh, if I can remember for one thing, probably just really using my voice and what I think, probably. Or never losing hope in what I love is probably the best answer because I love and push myself to do what I do every single day because I love it so much. And also using my voice and what I believe in the topics that are going around the world right now. Now, I might not like to speak publicly about it because, of course, people can be really hateful about like your political views or just things that you believe in or how you live every single day. So I really don't speak much publicly about it. But like sometimes on social media, I'll post things about some things. But I mean, I'll rather say like using my voice for different topics and just doing really what I love every single day. But how about you? Like, what's one thing you want to be remembered for?
Yeah, I actually, from other people saying, well, yes, Chris helped me here, Chris helped me there.
Yeah.
So I want to be remembered, even though there were some things that you do in your life which didn't help anybody. People are going to say, yes, yes, he helped me do this and he helped me do that, because you don't want to say, oh, I'm glad he's dead.
That's
Do you
that's a good answer.
do you remember everyone you've done something really good for? You remember everything you did for them?
Well, not everything. I do remember a lot of stuff from like my childhood and so on, but I don't think I'll probably remember like everything though. But I can remember like most things from that.
So talking about podcasting, are your parents, anybody in your family, especially you said you had cousins who were in the industry, are they jealous with what you do, or are they your biggest encouragers?
Um, I wouldn't say they're like jealous though. Like I think like these everyone has their own passions and the way they like to live life. Like me, my brother likes sports, plays sports. I like sports, but I don't play them. Like I did when I was very young. I played baseball and stuff. So I mean, I play sports, but it's not something I would do professionally. I mean, I want to play sports professionally, but it's. I would say like they aren't jealous. Well, maybe they are. Just don't tell it to me, but like I'll probably say they're very supportive of what I do, because if you would have seen me when I was young, the people would never expected me to be a podcast host or doing like public speaking or putting myself out there. So I would say like they're just very supportive of me, with me and really just encouraging me in doing what I love. Because 5 years ago, I would have never pictured myself doing this or putting myself out there. So I'll really just say, yeah, like I know I keep yawning. It's I'm forgotten, I'm exhausted. It's been a very busy day, but yeah, I would just say like there's very kind of encouraging in what I want to do rather than being kind of jealous about it.
Yeah? Well, you didn't give up, because I know you put your hands to something and eventually you just don't want to do anything, because before the pandemic or around then you were watching TV and you're like, you don't want to do this. You don't want to watch TV.
Yeah.
And then you just started a podcast. But what was that breaking point where you went, wait, I got to do something better than this? I'll take up podcasting. There must have been something like, did you see a podcaster online? Did you know someone who says, I'm a podcaster, you should do it too, Kylie? What made you say, hey, let me try this?
Yeah, like it really was a like pandemic. I was like into podcasts like when I started. Like I was during the pandemic, I listened to like a lot of podcasts and still do to this day. I love listening to podcasts. Like when I went on my walk, I listened to one of the podcasts I like. But the breaking point for me was really just looking for something to do like during the time I had. Because like during the pandemic, you never really had anything to do besides relaxing and being at home. And the only thing I did during that time was watching TV and going on walks. That's the only thing I did. And I was kind of bored about it. I was like, why am I doing this every single day? I actually need to get on with my life and instead of doing nothing. So I was like I had a random thought. I was like, why not start a podcast? And yeah, geckos and everything. And I was like, oh, sure. Like, I know it was like very random because I'm like, why not start a podcast? I don't know how to do it, or like how to do things, but it's always worth a try. If I don't like it, I don't have to do it. It's always worth a try. You won't know until you liked it. And so, like, when I started the podcast and interviewed people as time went on, like episodes on, I was like, I actually kind of do like this, figuring out questions and getting to meet people. And so that really was a breaking point for me. It's like kind of having nothing really to do and having an opportunity to actually do something rather than do nothing.
Did you not get up quite right at the right time? Like, you're yawning so much?
That's what, like I've been up since early this morning to pick up my papers for work. So I mean, it's been a kind of a bright. Well, it was very productive though. I can admit it was very productive, but it's very tiring. But I luckily got a nap in, so I mean that was worth it. But
Yeah. All right, Kylie. So if you were president just for one day, what was the first major change you would make?
The first major change I'll make. Whew. There's so many. Honestly, there's so many. But there's so many things I would definitely do. But probably the thing I would change that's on the top of my head is more representation for girls all around the world is probably the best thing for me. Because as you know, I'm the biggest empowering girl for people, especially young girls, and being a role model and being represented on screen, off screen, and in real life. So I'll definitely say the first thing I would do if I was president for one day is bring more representation for women and girls. But how about you?
If I was, well, I can't be president because I'm Canadian, but if I was prime minister, um, I would, just call for peace and say, let's put our arms down and go and hug each other. And you don't get that, but you do with some people. But that's all
Yeah,
I can say.
yeah. But like, what is like your number one goal as a podcast host?
To learn from them, and because I want to eventually go out and perform and release my own music, go out to different venues and use the skills that I've acquired over time as a podcast host and the people that have helped me. So
Mm-hmm.
because I hear from a lot of musicians and other podcasts such as yourself, how you deal with certain issues, certain things, the rituals before you go out and sing. So if I want to learn the bass guitar, so what's the first thing I do? And they suggest, well, don't get a bass guitar, get an acoustic guitar, learn that, play that first, and then go into getting a bass guitar. And don't just suddenly get a bass guitar and start. You don't necessarily have to buy Fender or Stratocaster or Gibson. Just get a bass guitar, a beginner, and learn that. And once you can play the basic chords, then you can decide where you go. Because you may not enjoy it, like with podcasting or with other things. Like I enjoy podcasting, but I don't want to be picking up a guitar and then a month or 2 months later I put it down and say, I can't do it. But most podcasts, they fail after about 30 episodes.
Mm-hmm.
And I was at 35 episodes of 40 episodes when someone told me that. You have more than 30 episodes. You're on your way, buddy. Because
Mm-hmm.
basically, anybody who does like 29 or 30 episodes have already walked away. And you've done 214 already. So I'm proud of you.
Thank you. Yeah, like it's crazy because like not a lot of people expect to get that much episodes out. Like I know a lot of podcasts I listen to personally, they have a bunch of episodes, but then end up quitting after a while, which is like crazy because I know like a lot of people love to listen to podcasts or to specific podcasts. But I know, like you said, like I know people can go for 30 episodes and then just don't do it anymore. At least they're like, I just have enough. This is enough work. But if you get past our 30 episodes, then you're on your way. Like you said, like it's podcasting. If someone's looking to be a podcaster, I'll say just go for it. Do it if you don't like it. It's okay. Not every the podcasting doesn't always suit. You probably like it better than like listening to it better than rather doing it, kind of like we're doing it right now. So like it's amazing how far like podcasting really took us more than like over 100, 200 episodes. It's crazy over these 2 years, which is so surreal. I didn't think I'd be doing a podcast for 2 years. Are you kidding? Like I barely made it to 5 episodes, like, which is crazy. But you just sometimes can't believe what's going on and how far you really come in such a short time.
How did you find your podcast guests? Like, how did you find your first one we saw there at the beginning, Cooper Surles, who's
Mm-hmm.
got his own podcast?
Mm-hmm.
Why him? Why was he the first one you wanted? And
Yeah, like I was a big fan of Cooper Surles before I started my podcast. Like I'm a big baseball fan, as you probably can tell by the background. But so basically, he hosted a baseball podcast with Ross Stripling, who's a professional baseball player for the San Francisco Giants, and he was a former Dodger. So of course, I listened to his podcast. As being a Dodger fan, I love supporting the players and meeting them and connecting. So when I realized he started a podcast and And of course, I'm being such a big fan, I was like, I have to reach out to him, because I was like, I love to interview him and do a podcast with them. And so I reached out to him. I was like, hey, Cooper, like, I'm a big fan of your work and everything. I love your podcast. I just started a podcast of my own. Would you love to come on or whatever? I love to chat. And he messaged me immediately. It was like, oh, yeah, of course, let's do it. And I'm like, oh my God, this is the best. Like, I'm interviewing someone I actually like for the first episode. Like, this is terrific. So we set it up and I interviewed him, which was amazing. He's really sweet. I mean, every time I watch an episode that I did in the beginning, I'm like, that was not me. Like, that was not me. It's so crazy how far you've come from a certain amount of episodes. Like, I was like, that first couple of episodes I did, you can see a major difference from what the interviews I do now from when I first started. Because I like every time I watch these episodes, I'm like, that was not me. I can't watch this. Like, it's horrible. But it's like, I'm just really grateful for that experience, really getting to interview him because he's absolutely awesome. They don't do the podcast anymore. They ended it shortly after I interviewed him, which is really sad. But, I was very grateful to have the opportunity when I had it before they ended up.
Yeah. Well, why was Sydney Hertz your second, Austin Ross your third,
Mhm.
and why did you choose Annie Kate Fitzpatrick to be your fourth podcast guest?
Yeah, so with Austin, I met him a year prior in the pandemic. My family's Phillies fans from being in Pennsylvania. We're 2 hours outside of Pennsylvania. And as we're speaking, my dad's at the Phillies game right now in their playoff game. So, of course, this is the perfect time to bring it up since they're in the playoffs. But yeah, like Austin at the time played for the Phillies, doesn't play for the Phillies anymore. But basically, when we went down to spring training before the pandemic, it was just like a couple of weeks before the pandemic started for my mom. So we got to get to spring training before for my mom's birthday. And basically, my family used to go to spring training a lot growing up and stuff. So it was like my first time as a teenager that I'd been there. I never remembered going there. So I was meeting a bunch of players and everything. I was meeting a bunch of them for the minors, majors. So I was meeting a bunch of people. And so basically I met Austin. At the time, I think he played for the Clearwater, which is the lowest point of the baseball thing. I think he was playing with them at that point. And basically, I was like talking with him for a couple minutes. Me and him were talking and getting along well, asking me a couple questions about where we're from. He's from Pittsburgh, which is on the west side of Pennsylvania. So we kind of connected about being from Pennsylvania, west side or whatever. And I then followed him on Instagram after, and then he actually followed me back from that. And basically, when I started the podcast, I was like, I sent him a message. I was like, hey, Austin, I don't know. I sent a regular message, didn't mention anything about meeting him because I just didn't want to, be awkward. So I just sent him a message and then he responded back. And he was like, oh my gosh, I remember you from spring training. I loved you, whatever. I'm like, dude, are you serious? You remember me from spring training at all the people? Like, are you serious? So, like, me and him did the interview, and it really was amazing. Me and him still keep in touch to this day. He's really amazing. It's really such a big support to me, with my journey so far, and hopefully I can connect with him again soon, maybe for an episode or maybe an in-person thing. I know he plays baseball on High Point right now. So hopefully maybe one of these days I'll go down to High Point and do an interview there. Who knows? But it really all those interviews I did, like the first couple of interviews I did, I was fans of them before I met them. Like with Sydney Hers, I watched her on YouTube before I met her. And with Annie Kate, she plays volleyball at Penn State. Well, she did. She plays for Florida Gators now. But I never heard of Annie, but I was like, she plays for Penn State, and I'm a big Penn State fan. Me and my family are Penn State fans. Penn State fans, I mean, huge. Like, we're huge Penn State fans. And so, like, once I found out she was plays for Penn State volleyball, and at that time, Penn State volleyball has won national championships back to back, and they're like one of the best teams in the nation. with knowing about Penn State volleyball, I was like, oh, why not reach out to her and play Penn State and everything? And she reached out and was like, oh, I'd love to. So I interviewed her, then met her a few months later at Penn State volleyball game. And after, I'm a big volleyball person, so I went to a bunch of sets and everything that I was at Penn State. So I ended up meeting her at one of those sets, which is amazing. She's so sweet. Now she plays for Florida, which is awesome. I miss seeing her though down here at Penn State. But yeah, most of the interviews I did in the beginning were just like I knew of them. Like I was kind of like a fan of them before I met them, and it really was kind of like messaging them through Instagram and connecting and be like, hey, I'd love to have a podcast type of thing.
Well, we also have to know that even though we're enjoying podcasting and we're enjoying talking to people, there's just war that's raging in Israel right now.
Mm-hmm.
People are dying. And also during the pandemic, people died, and people die every day, obviously. What are your feelings towards these things that are happening in the world? Do you still live your life going through the motions, going to do interviews with guests? Or are you like, wow, there's actually a war in Israel right now. Should I have a podcast? Because, I should think about the people dying. And so what are your thoughts on that?
Like, I think everything that's going on in Israel right now is just insane. Like, it's absolutely heartbreaking what those people and citizens are going through right now, especially women and kids getting raped, getting killed. Like, it's literally so sad to see. Like, every time I see stuff on social media, I just feel heartbroken. And especially the way they're treating Jewish people and everything. Like with the podcast, it really depends. Like, I want to keep going with the podcast, but it's like to help other people, like to get like their minds away from that and get some positivity from what they're seeing on the news right now. Like, that's kind of like what my biggest mission is really just get people's minds into the right headspace and just have some positivity while everything's going on in Israel right now. Let's hope everything just kind of gets better as time goes on. Even probably it might not be that way like right now, or maybe not for a while, but things always happen for a reason, even though it really hurts and people are getting killed for it for no reason and taken out of their homes when they're sleeping. Like, it's just awful.
I really appreciate hearing that from you, that you know what's going on in the world. You've learned quite a lot. Just move on and live your life one day at a time. That's what you should do, one day at a time. So I got two more questions for you. How about you? Do you have any more questions for me?
Yeah. If you weren't a podcast host, what would you be?
So I definitely would have been a performance artist. I had no intention of being any podcast host. I just wanted to be a singer and maybe an artist and just do whatever. But when podcasting came along, I started getting into podcasts. Now I'm going to let you know, Kylie, that I originally didn't like podcasts. When I got my iPhones, the the um, the podcast app would disappear totally from my phone.
Same here.
I didn't want anything to do with it. And then when I started podcasting, it was fun. I started watching Rich Roll. I started watching Joe Rogan. I started watching Lex Friedman. And I learned how they ask questions.
That's right. That's a really great answer. And that's the same way for me as well. So, like, I just wanted to kind of create a kind of like a safe space for guests to really just talk about anything, whether it's like family issues, health issues. And I just want to make a kind of comfortable space for people to talk about anything without being judged by others.
Have you ever had anybody in your Empowerment Girls contact you and say, Kylie, I know I can speak to you, and reveal their heart to you that made you go, oh, I can't handle this?
Yeah, a million times, yeah.
Good. So what is the purpose of Empowerment Girls? What do you see that happening in 3 years from now?
Yeah, like I see Empower Girls expanding the more than it is now. Like I see it maybe going into a nonprofit, maybe. I kind of want it to be a nonprofit, but I'm not putting as much dedication as I am with podcast stuff. I want to, but I really want to see it as a nonprofit, have a bunch of maybe start a podcast for it. Maybe just expanding it, everything like event workshops and everything. Like I was really hoping to kind of expand the organization in the next 3 years.
That's awesome. Like when you're 20, 25, who knows? You might you're quite an entrepreneur.
Thank you.
And eventually, you want to get paid for your work, and definitely when you go to broadcasting school, you want to do in-person interviews, or you just want to do a podcast.
Yeah, like I definitely would love to. Like, I don't think I'll probably see podcasting like once I go into college or after college, just because like I would much prefer kind of doing the in-person interviews for me, like E or USA Weekly or those are big media outlets. I see myself doing something for that, or maybe sports or for an MLB team, NFL team, or something, doing interviews or being a sideline reporter or something. Like I see myself doing those type of stuff, but I don't think I see myself maybe doing a podcast for the rest of my life. Like it's something I'd love to do in the moment, but I don't think I would definitely do it like once I get into college or after college.
Like you should go and check out the Rich Roll, the Lex Friedman podcast, Rick Beato. Like he talks to different musicians, stuff like that. I got one more question for you. So do you have one more last question for me, and then I'll ask you?
Yeah, like what is like your dream guest for the podcast?
Who is my dream guest?
Mm-hmm.
Sting.
Ooh.
Yep. I want to host Sting on my podcast.
Ooh, that's a good answer.
And I already know what I'm going to ask him. So I'm looking forward to that. That doesn't mean that, okay, now that I had Sting on my podcast, time to shut my podcast down and move on. Because he could be episode 400 for all I know.
Yeah.
And I love my guests, and I've become friends with a lot of them, and it continues to this day. And you too, you've become friends with them. And you've had Avery White from Darman on.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how you were able to contact her, but forget it. Like she's not going to be on mine, but she'll be on yours because she likes yours better.
Yeah, she might like yours better, like, but doesn't.
I don't know, but we both had Kaden and become good friends with her. And
amazing.
I've always had guests on more than once.
Yeah.
Than just saying.
It just makes my heart like throb. Is that like people just enjoyed it so much, Like it makes me so happy when people say that.
Than just leaving and walking away. If you could write a book, what would it be called?
If I had to write a book, what would it be called? Well, I kind of am writing a book, but this is FYI, I may or may not be writing a book. Not saying I am. Don't get too excited. But I'm just saying I may or may not be writing a book. But,
wow. Really?
This a little sneak peek. If my so may or not be book that I might be writing. It will be called It'll Be Unbothered, because it's kind of inspired by the song by Tori Kelly. I'm a big Tori Kelly fan. And also inspired kind of by my life a little bit, because like with Unbothered, it's really just kind of unbothered about what people say as much as it hurts me. As time goes on, I'm just pretty unbothered by what they say. Like as much as I'm hurt in that moment, as people go on and are just hateful comments, as time goes on, I'm just like, it might hurt me in that moment, but like right now, I'm just pretty unbothered. You know what I mean? So that's kind of probably what I'll call it.
So you're writing a book?
Maybe not. I'm not gonna admit it, but maybe.
Okay,
not.
that's fine. I like that though. Wow.
I don't want to get anyone's hopes up, so I just don't want to like spoil anything. Everyone excited then doesn't get released.
Okay, Can I get an autographed copy of the non-published, non-writing book by Kylie Montigney that doesn't
Yeah.
exist?
Yeah, I'll send
Excellent.
it to you in the mail. Once it's actually
Excellent.
legal,
Yes. Yes. And I have a birthday gift for you too, which I will send to you.
Oh, thank you so much. That's really sweet of you. You didn't have to do that. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. No, I appreciate the little gift you sent me. That's awesome. Yep. So it's I know you probably got other things to do, but give us as a last bit of advice to the audience who's watching this that will make them go, things that make you go, from Kylie.
From Kylie, from her. But the best advice I'll probably give to someone watching this from whoever they're from, whether they're from America, Canada, wherever, or how old they are, I'll just say this I don't know, just live every day to your fullest, no matter what's going on in your life right now. Is probably the best advice I can give people. No matter if you're in entertainment industry as a professional, a journalist, podcaster, or just a person that's in business. You can be anything, and you're dealing with self-doubt right now that it's very hard to get out of. I've been there. I was dealing with that 3 years ago, and it was hard for me to get out of it. I had a very bad anxiety. It was depressed. It was awful, and I never thought I'd get out of it. But now 3 years later, I'm living the best life I could ever imagine. But it's there's a lot of things that comes with living the best life you can imagine, and not a lot of people have the opportunity. So I would just say, just live your dreams, trying to make it happen. If it doesn't happen immediately, it will. Things take time. I literally been a fan of Hugh Jackman for 3 years. Well, longer now, and tomorrow is actually his birthday, which is crazy.
Wow.
But so it's crazy how I'm talking about this day before his birthday. But in 2019, I became a fan of Hugh Jackman, and then 3 years later, I met him, and I always wanted to meet him. I used to cry to myself to sleep so many times that I wanted to meet Hugh Jackman so bad. And 3 years later, I met Hugh Jackman. It just even things might not seem to come true in that moment, it will eventually. Just try to work hard for it. If you work hard for it, it will happen. So that's probably the best advice I could probably give to someone if they're listening.
Yeah, and I certainly hope to see Gina Davis and Hugh Jackman on your podcast.
Yes, please. If you're watching this, guys, please just reach out. I'm dying to do those interviews. So
Why didn't you? Well, why didn't you? You see him many times. Why don't you just walk up to him and say, "Hey, Hugh, I have a Talk of Fame podcast. I'd love for you to be a guest." Why not? You shy?
Hugh Jackman knows about it. Hugh does know about it. I mentioned him a few times, so I actually did. But it's hard to kind of get to him through social media or to his reps. It's kind of hard for it to kind of go through that. But if I see him in person, I'll probably be like, hey, can you do an interview? Things like that. Maybe schedule something in person or something. But I give him my information. So, he has my information. But I just never received anything. So it's always worth a shot.
Kylie Montigney from Talk of Fame podcast and my co-host also. We were talking back and forth. Thank you, Kylie. Really appreciate you as a co-host. Really appreciate this state of affairs here. Talking to each other and asking each other questions. We should do this again one day. But
Definitely.
thank you so much. I really appreciate everything. And everyone, Kylie Montigney and Chris Robert out, and look forward to talking to you again.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Good day.